Welcome to round 4 of the U.S. Chess Championship. The game we're going to look at tonight is Hans Niemann with white versus Fabiano Caruana with the black pieces. It's a long game, 80 moves, I believe, roughly 80 moves, something like that, and lots of maneuvering, lots of interesting things at the end of the game. We are going to talk about the rook ending a little bit. I'm going to do kind of a mini rook endgame lesson when we get there, but let's go ahead and get started. So we get a Nimzo Indian. This is a fun opening for black. I used to play this, and it's just a lot of fun. You a lot of times can hop into this e4 square with your knight. Sometimes you can play f5 and get some pressure on the king side. There's a lot of different ways to play it. Queen c2, one of the main approaches. Also e3 is pretty common. One of the main points behind queen c2 is that if you want, you can save your pawn structure whenever this gets traded. So if you don't play queen c2 and this bishop takes the knight, which it usually does, you have to take it back with the pawn, and then these pawns actually become weak. They're isolated, they're doubled pawns, and they can be attacked with like b6, bishop a6. You can attack this pawn, and the knight can come in, you can attack this pawn. So when you play queen c2, you can always just take it back with the queen, and you don't have that problem. So castles a3, and that's exactly what we see. So white's pawn structure looks kind of nice and pretty this way, and it's more of a positional approach. d5, bishop g5. Apparently this is all preparation, at least for Fabiano. He was playing very quickly, didn't use any time so far. Knight c6, queen c3. I don't want to get too bogged down because I don't really know the theory here very well. e5, d5, the knight goes back. So this is something that you see, I would say, quite a bit at the top level, and you have to be careful. Because if you're like me and you try to play moves like this, usually you get into trouble. But when you're 2700, you can get away with it. And the point is, you got to move the knight somewhere, and going all the way back actually can reroute it to, maybe a better square to d7. And so you undevelop the knight. And in this case, the c7 pawn is hanging. You could take it, but I think the issue here is that e4 is a pretty annoying move for white. Knight to d4, and what's the follow-up here? I can't actually remember. Knight to a6. The queen moves somewhere, and then I guess you just develop, and you're bringing the rook over. So even though you lose a pawn, you get some counterplay. This pawn is really annoying in the center. White is kind of behind in development. They haven't castled, and you're about to get your final piece into the game with tempo on the queen, and so you actually get quite a bit of counterplay. And it's a kind of an example of how grabbing a pawn early in the game before you've finished your development usually doesn't turn out so well. So, kind of keep that in mind. All right, so e3, bishop to f5. Again, this pawn is just kind of sitting here the whole time, but if you take it, like right now, let's see, what does the engine say? Yeah, you slide this rook over, and the queen has to move, and then the rook comes down, and it's just like too much pressure. It's not worth it. You can't castle now because your bishop's being attacked, so your king is now stuck in the center. This rook's going to come over, and same situation, right? It's just not worth it. So Hans doesn't take that. Plays a4. Okay, we have this interesting situation where Hans now has a passed d pawn, which is also supported by the rook, but it could also become a liability, right? And this is something that you have to watch out for in your games. If somebody has a passed pawn like this, there's two ways to look at it. One is it could be a target because it's so far advanced, and you can just kind of pile up and try to attack it. The other side of that coin is you have to be really careful, because if you try to move your knight away and you move your bishop away, next thing you know, the pawn's pushing forward and it's forking your rooks, or it's becoming a queen or something like that. So definitely an interesting dynamic to the game. All right, a5, the bishop comes over here. This move was forced, which is unfortunate. Well, I know it's not forced, but it's the best move, which is weird because normally you don't want to open up your king like this. But in this case, I can't remember what was the reason. There was a reason why e4, and what's the point? The point was that if this trade happens after you move the bishop somewhere, this pawn now is just a goner, basically. The rook's going to come here, and you can't save the pawn as white, and you're basically just down a pawn. And so that's why that line didn't really work, because of this e4 idea. Okay, so that's why you have to take with the pawn. And then we get some more maneuvering. And So Fabiano's kind of trying to attack over here where the pawn structure is messed up. Hans is trying to defend. Lots of back and forth maneuvering. And I'm actually just going to skip through most of this stuff because I want to get to the end game where we can talk about the rook ending. So yeah, lots of maneuvering here. I don't want to get too bogged down in all this. Okay. So right around here, it starts to get pretty complicated. So Stockfish was saying knight to b5 was the way to go. And I guess the idea is, number one, you kind of open up the square to bring your rook over. Also, potentially the knight is going to hop into d4 at some point. This is a very nice outpost because it can't be attacked. And so that could be just a really, really powerful knight if you get it there. And of course, if white trades, you have the endgame up a pawn. And maybe you can win this pawn later. And if you can do that, you have 2 pawns over here. And Stockfish really likes this. Now, it's not that easy. White's going to try to pressure you here. And I don't know. I guess Stockfish says you just sacrifice that pawn. You bring the rook in and start harassing some of these other pawns. Anyway, that's what Stockfish wanted. Game goes on. Almost looked like they were going to repeat. Then Hans plays this move, which is actually a nice move. It looks really weird because you're just giving up the pawn. The point is you're unleashing the bishop. And this is actually common with bishops. Sometimes when they're stuck with your own pawns, it actually just makes a lot of sense to sacrifice the pawn simply to unleash the bishop. And in this case, he can actually get his pawn back right away on h5. So you're not actually losing that pawn. It's just kind of like a trade. All right, so the game goes on. Apologize, I'm losing my voice. And all right, we get some blunders here. They were starting to get low on time pressure. Eventually, let's see, the knight and bishop get traded. Let's go ahead and get to that point. I don't want to get bogged down in this section. I want to get to the end game. All right, blunders. I don't even know why those were blunders. But eventually, we get here. All right, cool. This is what I wanted to talk to you guys about. A little mini rook endgame lesson. So this position, black has 1 extra pawn, which is still a bit away from becoming a queen. And yet this position is completely winning for black. Now, I'd like to show you a different position, which is a famous position in rook endings. It's called the Philidor position. So let me jump over for a second. This is the Philidor position. And white's going forward. Okay, so it's the same kind of idea where one side has an extra pawn that they're trying to become a queen. But this position is actually a draw. White cannot win. And so if you would like to pause and think through for a minute, what is the difference between this position right here and this position here in the game that we're looking at? There's one major difference. I mean, of course, the colors are switched, so black has the extra pawn here, white has the extra pawn. But besides that, there's one significant feature. See if you can figure out what it is. Well, if you had a chance to look at that, the major difference is that in this position, in the Hans Niemann Fabiano Caruana game, Hans's king is not in a good position to stop the pawn. Okay, it's not in front of the pawn. He would kind of need like 4 free moves to be able to have the king where it needs to be. If we compare that to the Philidor position over here, look where this pawn is going and look where the defending king is. It's basically right in front of it, 1 move away, right? And you can just blockade the pawn with your king. That is a huge difference. Okay, so that's kind of the first thing. On top of that, Fabiano's king is actually in a good position. You know, if you imagine Fabiano's king is, let's just say, way over here, it's going to be much more difficult. But because it's right here, he's really close to escorting the pawn with his king. Okay, so those major differences make this, I don't want to say an easy win. These rook endings are always tricky to me. I find them rather difficult. I feel like it's kind of a weak spot in my game, but it still should be a win. Now, let's go back to the Philidor position. This is really good to know. If you are playing this position as black, so white's pushing the pawn against you, you're trying to defend, what do? There's one technique, and once you know this, you can pretty much always draw these types of games, okay, if you remember this one move. And the move is rook to g6. You need to put the rook on the 6th rank. Okay, this is crucial. And the reason is you don't want to allow the king to get in front of the pawn. All right, so you just keep the rook there. It doesn't really matter what white does. You keep the rook there until eventually they say, okay, you know what? Since I can't move my king forward, I'm going to push the pawn forward. And as soon as they do that, you go all the way back. And now your plan changes from, you know, controlling the 6th rank to checking from behind. Check, 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 check. That's all you're going to do. So like, for example, if the king comes up, you're going to go check, and you're going to go check, and you're just going to keep checking, and you're just going to keep checking. And that's basically it. And even if, you know, the king starts to come towards your rook, well, then you can swing over, attack the pawn like this if you want. And you basically just keep doing this. And let's say white defends, and you can come up here and take the pawn, and you get a draw, right? And so, yeah, there's really nothing that white can do, right? Now, if we compare, if we go back to the beginning of this position, if we didn't play rook to g6, and we just try to check from behind immediately, the problem now is that white can shield their king with the pawn, and I believe, let's see, I believe that this is now a win for white. Yes, it is. And so we've messed it up. Okay, you basically have to get control of that 6th rank, otherwise you are going to lose. All right, so with that knowledge, let's come back to the game. We can see how Hans's king is not in the right position, and as the game goes on, notice how Fabiano's king actually gets in front of the pawn, which is ideal, right? And he can be shielded by the pawn from the rook. There's no checks from behind, kind of annoying the king. Okay, and so eventually here Hans was trying to get the king in front. Fabiano does not allow that, throws in the check, which forces it away, and then he's able to continue to escort the pawn with the king, and ultimately gets the win. I think Hans resigned right here, but the game could have gone something like this, and eventually the pawn is going to get down here. Let's actually see what's the winning technique according to Stockfish. So let's just say the rook goes here. You push the pawn. Let's just say the rook tries to attack you. I believe you just throw in a check. Yeah, you throw in the check, which is going to force the king away. And then you can do the, this is called the Lucena position, where you have to build a bridge with your rook. So essentially you bring the rook down here. And then let's just say white does something like this. You bring the king over. And when white tries to check you, what you're going to do is something like this. And then you come here. This is kind of the key, right? And the point is that if they check you again, because of where you put your rook, you can blockade it. And finally, white is out of checks. And none of the pieces, the king and the rook, can stop you from getting a queen. And that's how you win. So, yeah, that's why Hans actually resigned before they got to that point, right? Like over here somewhere. All right, so cool game. Hopefully that made sense and you learned something about the rook endings. It's not super common, but if you do find yourself trying to defend against a passed pawn like this, in a rook ending, just remember the 6th rank, blockade the king, and then as soon as the pawn pushes, you come behind and you check, 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 check. That's what you need to remember. All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that recap. I'll see you in round 5. And oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this earlier. Fabiano and Hans were tied. I believe it was a 3 or 4 way tie for first. And now Fabiano is going to be at least tied, maybe in the lead. I didn't even actually check the other games. It's been a long day. So I have to check that, and maybe I'll give you guys an update in the next video. But anyway, Fabiano is definitely in the lead. Okay, I'll talk to you guys next time. Stay sharp, play smart, take care.